Hello and welcome back to my channel, The Burner Beard. Obviously, last night was such a incredible night for Real Madrid fans and for Real Madrid. The players were incredible, and it was an incredible result as well. I'm joined by a very, very well-known journalist on Twitter, on football Twitter, Ben Hayward, a Spanish-based journalist, Madrid-based. Pretty sure, working for the London Evening Standard. Thank you for joining me, Ben.
You're very welcome, Muddassir. How are you doing?
Yeah, very well, thanks. Just haven't still gotten over last night, but yeah, we'll get into it. We'll get into the chat, and I'm sure we'll have plenty to say. Right, let's get straight into it. PK's comments saying that first half was one of the worst Real Madrid teams he's faced at the Bernabeu. I want to say, do you agree with his comments? And overall, do you think Real Madrid were deserved winners?
Yeah, it's interesting. PK's comments have been interpreted in two different ways. Now, the first way it's been interpreted is at a dig at Real Madrid. PK being very identified with Barca and obviously Catalan. He's had a few digs at Real Madrid over the years. But in this case, I think it's more of a wake-up call for Barcelona. Because if he's saying that Real Madrid this is the worst Real Madrid that he's faced in his time at Barca, what he's really saying, is what about Barca? I think it's something of a wake-up call. You remember a couple of years ago, going back to the Spanish Supercopa in 2017, after the two defeats at Camp Nou and then back at the Bernabeu, he said for the first time in his career as a Barcelona player, Real Madrid was superior. And then later he came out and said that those comments were to provoke a reaction from his teammates, for the club, a kind of a wake-up call. And I see this as something similar. It's having a dig at Madrid, but it's also saying to Barca, hey, what about us? We need to improve. And actually, I think he's right. I think we've seen two Clásicos this season, the 0-0 back in December at Camp Nou, and now this one. And to be honest, they're both pretty low quality compared to what we've seen
in the past,
in the games lit up by Messi and Ronaldo in the last decade, when these two teams were not only winning La Liga, but also winning European Cups as well. So I do think there's been a dip in form for both teams as well. So, yeah, I think there's an element of truth in his words. And as for whether Real Madrid deserved to win, I think they did deserve to win. First half, probably Barcelona had a bit more of the control, created the better chances. But the second half, Real Madrid were a lot better. And I think ultimately they did deserve to win the game.
Yeah, one of the key sort of pre-game talking points was Zidane's inclusion of Marcelo. Personally, me, I sort of was kind of worried that I thought, look, Marcelo's an easy target. He hasn't been good for about a season and a half. He's struggling clearly fitness-wise. Form has completely disappeared. But Zidane continues to amaze, doesn't he, with that selection? What have you made of Zidane's selection generally? And I guess the selection against Man City may have been a one-off. And has he learnt from that for this Clasico selection? Because he seemed to get a lot right yesterday.
Yeah, I think dropping Toni Kroos for the game against City, I still think that was a mistake. Obviously, the players can't play every single game, and the other midfielders are quality. But Toni Kroos is so important to the way Real Madrid play, and his delivery from set pieces as well would have also been useful against City. As for Marcelo, I think it was a big surprise to all of us yesterday. It seemed like it was a massive risk, playing a player who's been a liability. Let's be honest, defensively at least.
Yeah.
But I think it's because look back to the previous games and. Real Madrid have been really struggling for goals, and that with Marcelo in the team, he gives you an added threat in attack. So that was the thinking. It was a big risk, and I suppose maybe with Dembele out injured, and obviously Braithwaite didn't start the game, there wasn't really a pacey player to attack Barcelona on that flank. So it was definitely a risk, but in the end, it was a risk that paid off. And credit to Zidane for getting Marcelo back. He was important not just in attack but also defensively. That when he ran back to tackle Messi and then celebrated as if he'd scored a goal. A really good game in the end from Marcelo. So credit to Zidane. I think he doesn't get everything right. Like I said, I think the Kroos absence against City was a mistake, but what he does do really, really well is to manage this squad and manage to get back on board players who haven't been playing. Vinicius was left out for a number of games out of the squad altogether earlier on this season.
Yeah.
He's come back and he's been important. Mariano, out of nowhere, replaced Luka Jovic in the squad, comes on and scores a goal. And this is something that Zidane has been able to do really well. You've seen it at other clubs, players who are on the fringes, they're unhappy, and when they do play, they don't do very well. But Zidane is able to bring these guys back. Every press conference, every time he's asked, he always, says, even about Bale or players he might not have a great rapport with. He always talks about how important they all are. And then he shows it by calling them up like this, calling them back into the squad. So it's paid off for him, definitely.
Yeah, you touched upon Luka Jovic. What have you made of Zidane's handling of Jovic? And particularly during a time where, well, let's face it, since 2020, Real Madrid have really struggled for goals. Their forward line has struggled, misfiring completely. Surely, with Benzema's purple patch sort of not being there at all, surely he's got to give Jovic more of a chance, hasn't he?
Well, you would think so. I mean, Benzema was tremendous in the first half of the season and was scoring the bulk of Real Madrid's goals. And I just think he's a wonderful player as well, not just because of his goals, but the way he links up, the way he drops deep to create for others. Obviously, he did that so effectively when Cristiano was at the club, and for Bale as well. And but the goals dried up. In 2020, I think Benzema's only scored twice. And, there was a couple of games. Casemiro scored twice against Sevilla. There was the game against Getafe where Varane scored, and the other one was an own goal that he provoked. But you can't necessarily be relying on those kind of players to step up because it's not their job, is it, to score goals?
Yeah.
It's unfortunate for Jovic because you see he scored a lot of goals in Germany, but he hasn't really had the continuity in the team. He hasn't really taken his chances when he has played. And one thing I like about Mariano is the way that whatever happens, he always comes on and gives everything.
He makes an impact. He makes an impact, doesn't he?
He makes an impact. It reminds me a little bit. Do you remember
Morata?
The last time Real Madrid won La Liga? Yeah, Morata. The last time Real Madrid won La Liga, sometimes games wouldn't be going their way, and Morata and maybe Lucas Vázquez would come off the bench, and things would change just because of their work rate.
It was always the late show, wasn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And a bit of running, a bit of passion, and Mariano definitely does that. And Jovic so far, I mean, I don't doubt his qualities, but unfortunately, a club like Real Madrid, you've kind of got to hit the ground running, haven't you? Hasn't been able to do that. So it'll be interesting to see what happens now, whether Mariano will get more chances, whether Jovic will play, but Benzema definitely needs help at the moment.
The thing with Benzema, I find, is clearly when Cristiano was there, sure, he was this sort of provider almost. He would do things which would enable Cristiano to do his things, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the thing now, Real Madrid do not have a Cristiano type of figure. So why don't they go down the normal route where teams have a out-and-out striker, not sort of a Benzema type of striker? Not that I'm criticizing Benzema. I'm just saying during this lack of form, surely Zidane must understand, like, look, we're lacking goals. I've got two strikers here. Benzema cannot be irreplaceable on this form. Why do you think he keeps on persisting with Benzema?
Well, I mean, I think it is. Yeah, it's partly loyalty, I guess. But it's partly what he brings, and it's not just
But
goals.
there shouldn't be loyalty though. At this level, there should be. You should be playing on merit, don't you
No,
think?
absolutely, absolutely. I agree with you. And if you look at other players, he's been able to drop Luka Modric now and again, who's such an important player in his first spell in charge. Toni Kroos the other day, Marcelo, who is someone who Zidane loves, but he realizes that doesn't deserve to be starting necessarily. It's not really happened with Benzema. The thing is with the other players, Jovic and Mariano, is they deserve their chances, but they aren't better players than him. So is it really in the team's interests to be taking Benzema out of the team and picking one of those two? I'm not sure it is at the moment. I think that's probably why Zidane's not doing it. But I feel Benzema is probably more effective in the 4-3-3 when he plays with players who can attack down the wing, be it Vinicius, Bale if he's playing. I mean, that system really suited Benzema and Zidane's first spell in charge. But when they're playing with lots of midfielders anyway, I feel like perhaps.
I feel like Benzema becomes an extra midfielder though
Well,
in a
that's the
different
thing.
formation.
That's the thing. But if they've got four or five midfielders in the team anyway, maybe that's not so necessary. So it's a little bit counterproductive. Maybe you'd be better off going a little bit more direct. And Benzema can do that as well. But even last night, I thought his link-up play was outstanding. But then he gets a good chance or two and doesn't hit the target. That volley in the second half, for
Uh,
example,
yeah,
should have been hit
when it
the
was
target.
goalless, he should have been burying that.
Yeah. But then, even the best missed chances, and he's one of the best. Messi missed chances as well. So, um, yeah, it's a difficult one.
Okay, let's move away from Zidane. Let's go to his opposite number, Kike Setien. Um, as I mentioned earlier, he failed to worry Marcelo at all, and I think that was a very amateurish mistake from the coach. Um, what are your thoughts on that decision not to sort of pressure and completely out of form Marcelo to the extent, as you said, he's almost been a liability for Real Madrid this season. But the Brazilian was marching down to see he was almost like a left winger, more than a left back yesterday. So he was that comfortable. Um, so what have you made of that decision? And generally, what have you made of Setien so far as a Barca coach? I know that a lot of Barca fans still aren't too happy with what he's doing.
Yeah, first of all, I think it probably took Setien by surprise that Marcelo was starting the game. So, he already had his starting lineup out there. But, he could have adapted things.
Yeah, you can make in-game adjustments, can't you?
With
To
in-game adjustments, he could have brought, for example, Braithwaite on earlier. He could have even started Braithwaite. There was talk that he might do, and there was some thinking that he might start Braithwaite just because of his pace, and didn't do that. I thought Vidal in that position is ineffective, really. But we saw as soon as Braithwaite came on, for example, within a minute, he'd got past Marcelo and had that shot, which Courtois did really well to save. And that was a threat that they hadn't had throughout the whole game. I think Setien, yeah, perhaps could have been braver with his starting lineup and with his choices, with his changes as well. And I think Barcelona fans are recognizing that he's doing a job now in very difficult circumstances, something they maybe didn't always recognize with Valverde. But
yeah,
the squad is very short. They've obviously got injury problems, missing Suarez, missing Dembele, whose pace definitely would have caused problems yesterday, and yeah, all sorts of issues at the club. But their away form hasn't really picked up since Setien came in. I mean, that was the big question mark about Valverde, not just the playing style, which a lot of the fans were unhappy with. Setien has changed that a little bit, but now he's lost 3 games already, all of them away from home. So it's all very well at Camp Nou, where they were formidable anyway and thrashing rival teams in pretty much every game. Not every game, but they were pretty strong at home. They still are, but it's away from home where they're struggling. And time will tell for Setien, but I think he's assumed the role in very difficult circumstances.
Yeah, it obviously doesn't help Setien, like you mentioned Suarez out. Clearly, that's the bigger injury of the two. Dembele is always out. Really, you shouldn't. I shouldn't be laughing at that, but he is often out. Unfortunately, Suarez is clearly key because I feel like without Suarez there, Messi, it does impact Messi. It clearly does impact Messi when Suarez is absent, and I don't know what you think, Ben, but I don't think Messi has adapted that well to Griezmann. And I feel like the Griezmann signing hasn't really gone as planned for Barcelona. So I want to know your opinion on that as well. But let's just talk about Messi. Obviously, he hasn't scored in 5 of his last 6 La Liga games. And he hasn't scored in 6 of his last 7 games in all competitions because he didn't score against Napoli. Obviously, the assists have been there. It's Messi, so he's obviously not going to be completely impactless throughout the whole game for 5 or 6 games. He does obviously have his impact, but he doesn't have the goals. I saw yesterday that I think he got out sprinted by Marcelo or average speed or something like that. Do you think Messi is carrying some sort of injury?
Yeah, he is. He's definitely been in some discomfort these last few weeks. And actually, Barcelona's Twitter account posted a video before the game of Messi arriving at the Bernabeu, and it showed like a slight limp. And no, that's quite common actually for players to play with to have a little bit of a limp when they come through the mixed zone or when you see them before the game. The amount of knocks that they pick up over a season. But I think it's clear that Messi hasn't been right, and it's been a while now. It's going back to when Valverde was still there.
Yeah, something isn't right, is there? Because you could see his body language yesterday.
Yeah, you can see it. So perhaps it's affecting him. He doesn't look as quick as he usually does, and of course that is also an age thing. But it's partly because he's carrying this problem and doesn't feel 100%. You can tell, and the goals have dried up a little bit. Although don't forget he scored 4 in his last game as well. So it's not like they've completely dried up. But that's the thing, isn't it? You can, for a team that's so reliant upon their star player, and then obviously he's not right. He's missing his sort of partner in crime in attack, Suarez, as you say. Their understanding is almost telepathic on the pitch. So that's a big miss for them. And Griezmann, the rapport hasn't been great so far. Griezmann had a disappointing match last night, and it remains to be seen. Although he scored important goals,
he has.
The question mark's still there about how he's going to fit in the long term. But then that's just one of many question marks at the moment at Barcelona, I guess.
Yeah, one of the biggest question marks for me is when Messi does decide to call it a day. I know this is always discussed on football Twitter. I know everyone has this discussion. Barcelona haven't really prepared for that time well enough, have they? I mean, you look at Real Madrid, and yes, they are suffering without Cristiano goal-wise. Obviously, you would. Any team in the world is going to suffer goal-wise without Messi and Cristiano. But I think Real Madrid have prepared better for life after Cristiano than Barcelona have without Messi. I don't even think they've started preparing because the signing of Griezmann, what is he, 28, 29 years old? Suarez is 30, the wrong side of 30. The issue, there's big issues there, isn't there? Like once Messi goes, there's a lot to worry about if you're a Barcelona fan.
Yeah, there is. Well, I think the thinking at Barcelona is that Messi's still going to go on actually for a few more years yet. I mean, hopefully
till the World Cup, right?
At least you would think.
Because I think his contract's up in 2021. So
it is. But he has no plans to leave as things stand, and has said that he's happy. He'd be happy to sit down and talk about a new deal. I do agree with you in a way, but I think there's time to think about that. What I think is needed is a kind of better support network, a better team around him, because they've been so reliant now upon his brilliance these last few years, seemingly more than ever before. So, and with Suarez out, that's just exacerbated, as we saw last night. So yeah, it's definitely an issue. Dembele, that signing hasn't really worked out just because of his injury problems, really. And Coutinho didn't work out, and Griezmann isn't really working out. So yeah, they haven't made the right decisions. But also, I get what you're saying about Real Madrid, and they've signed these young players, Vinicius, Rodrigo, for example. But they're really young still. It's a time of transition, even at Real Madrid, and we've seen it with their problems in front of goal as well. And they're going to have to think about replacing Benzema also. Obviously, Bale's still there, but not really there. And so I think both teams have got issues, big issues in attack, and that was evident. I think that's been evident in the last two Clásicos as well.
Yeah. Okay. So let's get back to the two teams and the La Liga title race. Obviously, I think you'll agree that both teams aren't good enough to win the Champions League this year. So somewhere down the line, they will have to focus solely on La Liga. I looked at Barcelona's away form and Real Madrid's home form, and I reckon the key to the title will be between Barca's away form and Real's home form, because neither have been good. Neither have been as good as they should be. Obviously, Barcelona are almost flawless at home. And Real Madrid are decent away. So I pinpointed these two as the key factors. And Barcelona have some big fixtures away from home. So they've got to travel to Seville. They've got to travel to Celta, and they've got to go to Villarreal as well. And also they've got to play Atleti and Bilbao at the Camp Nou. So that's a lot of tough fixtures if your star man isn't firing, and if things continue like they are last night, Barcelona could drop a lot more points. Whereas Real Madrid have an easier sort of run in, especially at home. They've travelled to all these big stadiums, and they've got a decent amount of points. Whereas in previous seasons they wouldn't have got as much points from these stadiums, and their home form hasn't been that bad either. It could be a lot better. But what do you think? Do you think the title race is in Real Madrid's hands right now? Theirs to lose?
It's difficult. It's so difficult, isn't it? I mean, it's 12 games. There could be twists and turns yet to come. I mean, it is in their hands because they're the leaders now. But the thing is, and you're right when you point to Real Madrid's home form as a problem, and this win against your biggest rivals at home is a big boost of confidence in that respect. And Barcelona's troubles obviously have come on the road. I mean, with Valverde, for example, Barcelona only lost once at home in his entire tenure, which came, funnily enough, against Setien's Betis. But yeah, they're formidable at home, Barcelona, and Real Madrid are pretty good away, let's be honest. I've had a look at the fixtures, and it's just so hard to tell. I mean, talking about Real Madrid specifically, often it's the games where you least expect them to drop points.
Exactly.
When they drop points, so you look at Valladolid, you look at Celta, Mallorca, Levante, games like that. So it really is unpredictable, and yeah, that just really hard to call. But if they can improve their home form, they've got some tricky games at home. I think they got Getafe, for example, at home, which could be a very difficult one, given that that's a derby and Getafe very much on form this season. So yeah, it's a tough one to call. It's going to be about keeping their nerve between here and the end of the season. But
on paper, though, do you think it is down to that could be decisive? Barca's away form against Real's home form.
I think so.
Considering the fixtures, I think Barcelona's away fixtures look tougher than Real Madrid's home fixtures.
Yeah. that's true. I mean, Sevilla is a game. It's a tough one. It is one that they usually win. But then,
But
who knows?
it's also one where Messi usually fires in a 91st minute free kick top corner. So, but
Yeah,
if he's not doing that, my point is, if it's a Messi of last night where he's struggling fitness wise and his fitness doesn't improve, if he continues playing through it, you never know what can happen.
of course, and
Um,
it comes down to confidence as well, and
yeah, and
what, what
Luis Suarez isn't. Well, when's Luis Suarez back? He's out for another month, isn't he?
yeah, he's out until probably late April. So
Oh, there you go. There you go.
he'll be
So
back for the run-in, but not really before that. I still think they'll win most of their games at home. I mean, Atletico could give them a good game, for example. They've only obviously had a 5-0 win at home to Eibar last weekend. They beat Leganes 5-0 at home in the cup. But apart from that, all of Setien's league games have been won at Camp Nou by a single goal.
yeah, yeah.
So it's not like they're blowing teams away at home. So yeah, they could potentially drop points, and you're right. It's probably going to come down to Barca away from home and Real Madrid at home, and whoever does better those respective games will probably win the title.
Okay, Ben, just quickly, we just touch upon moving away from La Liga for a second. Just touch upon Real Madrid's second leg against Manchester City. What did you think of their first leg? Do you think they can turn it around?
Yeah, it's interesting you said just now, Muddassir, about the Real Madrid and Barcelona probably aren't good enough to win the Champions League, and I would agree with that statement. I think last night really showed what kind of we already know, that those of us who watch La Liga every week. I think maybe people who just watch the Clasico are maybe surprised to see Barcelona playing like that, Real Madrid playing like that. But we watch La Liga every game.
It's been happening for a long time. Yeah, yeah.
It's been coming for a while, and also going back to the first Clasico in December as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's going to be very, very difficult for Real Madrid because I was at that game as well, and they took the lead slightly against the run of play. They didn't play well, but when they get in front like that, you think, here they are doing it again. What they did when Zidane was there at the club for the first time as coach, and then of course the two late goals from City changed everything. And it's not a good result going into the second leg against a really strong team who are going to attack them. And in that respect, Manchester City at home, at least they're going to come out and they're going to give you space, and that makes Madrid dangerous. Also, Barcelona are a team that play with a very high defensive line, and they can be got at. You can cause them problems, but I just find it very difficult to see City not scoring at home, where they're very strong.
Do you think the Ramos red card? Yeah.
Without Ramos, I think Ramos is a big miss as well. So,
I think that was the moment. I think if Real Madrid Real Madrid finished that night at 1-1 with Ramos still on the pitch. I think they would have been a bit more hopeful. I think, and I would have been a bit more hopeful. I think Ramos, that sending off at the end sort of brought it to an end, I think.
That's right. I mean, if you draw 1-1, then you go there and that, for example, a 2-2 draw would get you through on away goals. But we'll have to see. If Real Madrid score first, City are a team who've been a bit wobbly in the Champions League over the last few seasons.
Yeah, and Guardiola often overthinks things, doesn't he?
Yeah, that's right. And so there's always a chance. I mean, if Real Madrid score first, City might get a bit nervy, and you never know. It's game on. A bit like we've seen with Paris Saint-Germain. When it comes down to it, the shirt pesa la camiseta, as they say here. Teams fear Real Madrid in Europe, but they're going to need an epic night. And if I had to say whether I think they'll do it or not, I think it's unlikely. But you never know. Yeah.
Okay, Ben. Lastly, give me one word. La Liga is going to be won by.
I think Real Madrid. I think Real Madrid will win.
Okay.
I think they've got their noses in front. I mean, last night if they'd lost, that would have been 5 points and the head-to-head, and it would have been all over. This, in terms of morale, is absolutely massive. So it's theirs.
I often think, and I think a lot of people aren't focusing on this morale aspect that much, as much as it should be, because I feel like Zidane, even during his first tenure, his teams had so much confidence and they fed off this morale, they fed off this confidence, and they fed off this entitlement to that, look, we're Real Madrid, we are going to get something from this game or from this tie. That was the sort of mentality that Zidane's team had. And I feel like this sort of result will give them that. And they're far away from that team's mentality, but yeah, results like last night will get them on the right track.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, there's 12 games left. Anything can happen, to be honest. Yeah. But morale is big. It's a huge confidence boost, and they'll really want to win La Liga as well. Obviously, they've won those 3 Champions Leagues in a row, and it's like their competition. They feel it's their competition, of course, but winning La Liga, I think, is
yeah, I think that's the aim, isn't it?
so important to them this time as well. And Zidane's spoken about that as well.
Yeah, I think even during when Zidane was winning all those Champions Leagues, he still mentioned how La Liga is the one that he wants more. He often prioritizes it more, doesn't he? But he obviously hasn't been able to win it more than once. So
it's very difficult, especially coming up against Messi, who's been over the years just producing it week in, week out. And it's almost like a cheat code for Barcelona, you know.
Yeah, he's just ruthless. And you have to be up until match day 38. He just doesn't give up, does he?
That's right. So, but yeah, I mean, as Zidane, a lot of people get annoyed when you talk about this, but Zidane admits that La Liga is the true barometer of how good a team is over a season. So, yeah, it's not a surprise to me that he values it so highly.
Okay, Ben. And on that note, let's call it. Thank you so much. I know you've been really busy this week and this weekend, so thank you so much for taking some time out for me. It was a pleasure. It was a pleasure. Really good, interesting chat, and we'll definitely love to have you back on the Burner Beard soon. So thank you for that, and to all the listeners, thank you for listening. Thank you for joining. Thank you for supporting my channel. Please subscribe and share, and I'll be back with another episode with another guest next week after the Betis match. Top of the table.